Hello, this is Jeremy Borg, a reporter for the Western Standard. Today, we're going to have Heather Mason on. Heather is a founding member of caWsbar, Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights, an organization that fights for women's sex-based rights under the Charter. Heather, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm good. So today we're going to be talking about the Daniel Sakol case, where Daniel Sakol broke into somebody's home and sexually assaulted a toddler. And recently, Daniel Sakol was denied a transfer to women's jail after requesting it because Daniel Sakol identifies as trans. What are your thoughts on that situation?
Honestly, the whole situation just blows me away that this happened and that, that poor toddler, it just infuriates me, but I am not surprised by this situation. And I just want to make it clear too, is that Daniel wasn't denied his transfer because the policy changed. He was denied because he is a repeat sex offender, and this time the public was watching. I don't believe that Daniel would have been denied his transfer had the case not blown up the way that it did with the protests outside of the courthouse and outside of the jail. If the public wasn't watching, I would almost guarantee that he would have been able to get a transfer into a woman's jail.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen instances of people abroad doing similar things. There was a case in Germany recently where a known neo-Nazi has been requesting a transfer into women's prison. Are there situations here in Canada where things like that occur, where the public isn't watching, and how frequent is it?
Yes, so this has been going on in Canada for a while. So a little background, I'm actually a formerly federal prisoner. Like, I was incarcerated provincially and federally. And while I was incarcerated, the transfer policy had changed. So in the case of Daniel, we're talking about provincial. He's not yet in federal. Provincial is 2 years less a day. Federal is 2 years plus a day. So currently he's incarcerated in an Ontario provincial jail. And they've had a transfer policy that's been in place since, realistically, it was gender identity or expression was added to the Ontario Human Rights Code in 2012, but they didn't start allowing the transfers to happen until 2015. And mainly they kept them away from women in the jails. And it wasn't until Bill C-16 was passed federally in 2017 that they really started transferring the men in the provincial jails. This is also when they started transferring the men in the federal prisons. And there have been multiple cases, like while I was incarcerated, there was men that were incarcerated with me. Even when I was in the halfway house, there was men that were in the halfway house with me. And I've been advocating about this issue for the past 6 years. And I found that the public doesn't really believe that it's happening because they don't think the government would do something like that. Like, I can remember being on the phone with my mom when I was in prison, and I was like, Mom, there are men in here with us. And she's like, no, there isn't. They wouldn't do that. And I'm thinking, Mom, I'm in here. You're not. Like, what do you mean? And I've just encountered that same scenario over the years. But yes, so Ontario has a transgender policy, and it's already allowed dangerous sex offenders who identify as trans into women's jails. There was just recently a case with Charles Wadling Leeson, and he's convicted of sexually assaulting a teaching assistant at Met University in Toronto. And he was transferred to a women's jail, Vanier for Women in Milton, Ontario. And it was only moved back to the men's jail after engaging in inappropriate behavior that put women at risk. There's also Patrick Parasol, a convicted sex offender, pathological liar. He was also transferred to a woman's jail, Vanier again, I believe. And he was transferred back to the men's custody once they realized the danger he posed to the incarcerated women there. There's also like Yostin Marullo, who violently sexually assaulted and murdered a woman in Toronto. And he was actually transferred to a woman's jail as well. And when he was going through his trial, he didn't want the judge to know that he was identifying as a woman and was going by she, her pronouns and was in a woman's jail. So there are tons and tons of cases of this happening in our jails and also in our prisons. The difference with Daniel is that his case was denied up front, but that's because the public was watching. With the other cases, the public was not aware and only became aware after they were transferred back to the men's jails. Something interesting that I read in the news article that just came out about Daniel was that he was wearing green. So green is institutional clothing that's issued to women. Men wear orange. So at Daniel's last court appearance, he was wearing female clothing. So he's still actively presenting himself that he's a woman, which I'm not surprised by at the least.
Mm-hmm. And you said that because Daniel was wearing green at the court appearance, he's still trying to identify as that. How likely is it, do you think, that Daniel Sakol is going to be pushing to be transferred to a women's jail once he is charged federally?
So he actually still has recourse that he can pursue for this denial in the women's jail. He can file grievances. He can bring a human rights complaint on the basis of gender identity. He can seek a judicial review in court. But in reality, his chances are slim. Like, I can't see the ministry going back and changing their decision because of the public attention that is on this case. It makes it almost impossible for them to be able to backtrack. Do I believe that once he is sentenced federally that he is going to try again? Yes, I do think he's going to try again. With the public attention of this case, I don't think that CSC is going to allow his transfer. But like I said, he has recourse. So it's all up to the courts and the judicial review of his case and whether or not he can show material circumstances that have changed. He might say all sorts of things. Who knows what he is going to say? So my fingers are crossed that they continue to deny his transfer requests.
Mm-hmm. And in situations where men were put into women's prison while you were incarcerated, how did that impact the general body within these prisons?
It changes the whole dynamic, right? So you now have men in there who are fully intact. They're a lot stronger than you are. They're threatening. Like, they're women that are really scared because it's different from fighting like a woman and fighting a man. They overpower us. And also it changes, like, it causes lateral violence between the women because it pits women against each other. There's a lot of men in there that basically will gain sexual favors from the women in exchange for canteen, or they have the women fighting the other women, and women don't want to tell because they don't want to be labeled a rat, or they're scared of retaliation. There have been pregnancies, there's been abortions, there's been criminal harassment, there has been all sorts of different dynamics in that prison and in these jails because they have been transferred into that environment.
Mm-hmm. And what would you feel is an adequate solution or way to deal with this problem of men identifying as female and transferring into women's prisons?
So there is space available in the men's prisons across Canada. Like, there are unused pods, wings, and ranges where they could tailor those ranges and pods to the unique needs of those who identify as women. And they could be safely incarcerated there, where they will still have access to all the amenities of that men's prison, but they won't gain access to women or to the children that are living in the women's prisons, because women's prisons have a mother-child program where your child 4 years and under can live there full time. So I think a safe alternative would be to have these trans areas, which there are prisons in the West that do have trans ranges already. So I don't see why we can't continue that.
Hmm. Is there anything else you feel that could sort of mitigate these problems going forward? I know the federal government has been talking about altering bail legislation. Do you think that would help with this problem?
I'm not sure how that would help with the problem. Um, because if they're in, they're gonna want to be in women's prisons, right? And a lot of what I find federally, of course, is that there are a lot of men who can't get parole or who have been in for decades and decades and aren't getting out. So now their recourse is to go to a woman's prison where they have an easier time. They don't have to worry about as much violence. They have access to women. And actually, something that I was told a long time ago when I was in jail, and this reminds me of this. I was speaking to someone who was in protective custody, and I was like, well, why are you in PC and not GP? And they said, why would I be a peasant among kings when I can be a king among peasants? And that is the same scenario that we have here. Why would these men who are convicted of sex crimes, who are peasants and who are at risk in men's prisons, stay in a man's prison when they could go to a woman's prison and become the king?
Hmm. Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I would just like to add that I'm actually very surprised lately with the media in Canada that are picking up on these cases. I was very, very surprised to read about the Toronto Star when they reported on Charles, and that he was transferred to a woman's jail. And I actually reached out to the journalist and was like, hey, you're missing a critical piece to your article, because she didn't mention the charter challenge that was launched by Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights. They launched a charter challenge with the help of JCCF, and this is to challenge that the transfer policy for Correctional Service of Canada is actually violating the charter rights of the incarcerated women under Section 7, 12, and 15. So what I want people to know is that there are people out here trying to challenge this policy and show that it is a danger to women and it needs to be reversed.
Hmm. And if anyone has any issues or would like to speak with you, what would be a good place to contact caWsbar or you at?
They should reach out directly to caWsbar. You can send us an email at www.cawsbar.ca, and that is caWsbar, Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights. Your emails will get forwarded to me. I'm also on X, so you can contact me there. But yeah, if you have been a victim or if you know of anything that is going on, you can report that directly to me. And it would help our charter challenge, and it'll also help protect the women that are inside right now.
Thank you so much for your time, Heather. I appreciate it.